You want to
Test.
like there's probably a better way to do that.
I am, yes.
Can we see the screen here?
Like, will we see the slides? What will we see?
Yes. So we will share your screen and then we can put it into presenter mode so you can see what you're doing.
Yeah, because I was just like, I have no idea what slides.
So this is what you will see. The Zoom people also see this as well as you. And are we moving with the mouse? You can also click with this. Okay. And this thing, are we are we supposed to
Put it on your lapel.
Yeah. And it picks up pretty well if you have like, you want to just leave it here too. So it's kind of up to you. If you would rather. You don't have to do that.
Okay. Drop it.
Down here with some water. I do have a question for you if you want to come back for me. Let me these are all furnished. So I wasn't sure what to do with that.
Yeah, cool.
Maybe.
I'm gonna go check on the people.
Yes. Nice to meet you. No, I was excited to be with your today.
Yeah.
This system is interesting for the fact that it's part of Zoom, but it also has its own chat. And so depending on like any new stuff, so while we were either at the code, Hi, it's so great to meet you in person. Hi. Good. How are you guys enjoying Clemson? It's nice. Yeah. Oh, awesome. It's so nice to be getting some fun. A little different from Charlottesville. It is, yes. How's the conference for you so far? Great. I've been working every day, so it's interesting to be able to help and see all the presentations. You've done WAC stuff before? Yes, so in my master's, I worked with Cameron for writing as a curriculum, and then as assistant director to first year composition, I kind of just the territory. Yeah, sure. Well, yeah, I'm excited to see. Unfortunately, over here, my husband, who is also working the conference, is defending her dissertation tomorrow. So I have promised her that I would not work that day. Yeah, that's totally okay. But I'm moving at the end of the month. Oh, are you? Yeah.
You know where you're gonna be?
I am right off the draw of the road, I think.
Okay. Awesome.
Pretty central.
Okay. You're the only person for like lots of details on how to find a place to live. Was like, I think she knows.
Yeah.
I felt that. reaching out.
Oh, no, yeah, I still have friends that live in the area. And I remember generally the layout, so. Yeah, I was born in Charlottesville. Yeah, I haven't been back in about 10 years, but
Yeah.
it's still fresh in my mind.
I'll be traveling for most of July. I'll be back at the end of the month. Yeah, insane.
Definitely well.
Yeah, and also, sorry to put you on that. You know, and then let them know that you're there, all of us, and tell us that you're around, and if you want to meet people or see officers or.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah. Be nice to Stacy, be a little scared. She'll be nice to her.
Okay.
She's very smart. She's good at her job. Very nice. And a lot of us are not. Like, and I don't mean us. So, if you're smart, she likes you.
Yeah. When you're assembling real, I like to see people.
You've got your friends.
Let me know.
Yeah, we're excited to help you. Yeah, Stevenson is actually really on. Yeah, everybody likes you. She's just like fascinated by your research and all of it.
I'm very excited. Part of the reason I'm moving so early is because I want to get situated, but I also want to have time to meet and talk to everyone.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
And these.
Yeah, so you can just use it here.
Okay, so Ashley, have you been up here? Do you know that you can see the computer? Okay, so I'm- My notes are on it. Yeah, it's very professional.
No, I was telling them you can leave them up here if you want, or you can put it on. It should have from there, but not someone in the chat was telling me.
Okay, I'm very not good on the microphone. It's like my voice doesn't carry, so let me know.
We can move some of this stuff.
Some kind of control panel. That's great, thank you. We just leave the door open, right? Okay. All right. Well, it's 3 o'clock, so I'll go ahead and get started. Hello, welcome to our panel on nursing faculty teach writing. And we're so happy to be with you all, learning from the wonderful work that all of you are doing. Yeah. Oh, I'm supposed to have the mic. Can you hear me now? I need to be louder. I hate being louder. Okay. So we're glad you're here. Is that better? Okay. One of the things that I love about this conference is getting to go to everybody else's presentations and learn from all of you what you're doing. So thank you for taking the time to come to ours. And you can access all of our slides today on Kenny's website if you want to. Obviously, you're seeing them now. Let's see. So I am Heidi Nobles. I'm the incoming director of our WAC. I've been the associate director for the last several years. And I'm an assistant professor in the English department. Kenny Fountain is the outgoing director of the Writing Across the Curriculum and the current director of the Writing and Rhetoric program. And then Ashley Hurst is our illustrious nursing faculty member. We're so glad she's here. Associate professor of nursing with a JD. And so she's always got her her legal consultation on point. And she's also the student learning assessment coordinator and our WAC liaison. So she's going to talk to you about how they embedded their actual curriculum, and we'll talk about how we supported them doing it. Just a quick note. So this is where we're going today. So Kenny is going to introduce you to kind of WAC at UVA and how we have implemented our program more broadly. And then you'll get to hear Ashley talking about how that has played out in the nursing program, which has been kind of our flagship program to work with. And then I'll get up and talk a little bit about the practicalities of how what they implemented looked on our end in the WAC program, and then also kind of looking ahead. We should have plenty of time at the end for Q&A and discussion. So Kenny, you're up.
Again, thank you all so much for being here. I'm often really too loud, so if I am, let me know. So making sure I understand how things work. Okay, so yeah, I'm gonna discuss a very brief, we're making sure you have plenty of time to hear from Ashley and Heidi, who have the more interesting stuff, but sort of a really brief overview of sort of our approach. So WAC at UVA officially begins as part of our quality enhancement plan, for better or for worse. WAC had been going on for many years through the director of the writing program, who came to UVA in 2013 as a new director to the program. And so he did a lot of WAC stuff unofficially. In 2017, UVA begins its quality enhancement plan based on the idea that it would help undergraduates develop as writers and help students engage more with writing in their courses. Now, for those of you who know, a quality enhancement plan is set up by SAC, COC, or some other accrediting body. It's a 5-year plan. A university infuses a lot of money for 5 years to show their accrediting body that they've done something. And after that 5 years, you never know what's going to happen next. I can now say that our 5 years are over and we have been funded or will soon be funded once everything's signed for 3 more years. So hopefully we didn't do such a terrible job. But the focus of it was in many ways to implement, of course, writing across the curriculum. UVA is a great school. UVA is an old school. It's a hierarchical school. Institutionally, it's a bit opaque to how it runs. And I like to jokingly say that they discovered that rhetoric and composition existed around 2013, right? So we're not necessarily, we're at different places from other institutions, even as this big, quote unquote, prestigious R1. But our focus was in 3 areas: instructor preparation, which would include graduate instructors as well, graduate students, curriculum development, and infrastructure. The infrastructure changed a bit and in a sense, in many ways, sort of fell out. What it really was, though, is to help provide faculty and instructors, graduate instructors often, with workshops and seminars, pretty conventional 4.5-day long faculty seminar, also a 4.5-day long graduate instructor seminar just for graduate students in the disciplines. Graduate students do not get a lot of sort of pedagogical training across grounds, we call it, campus. Assisting in the creation of writing enhanced courses based on a new criteria that we came up with, and just generally providing resources for faculty. So there were some strengths and points of leverage, right? And so I'm thinking about Cox, Galen, and Melzer's, in their Sustainable WAC, which is an amazing book. I was fortunate that it came out right before I stepped into this position. So some of the strengths of UVA is that, as a general rule, they care about the undergraduate experience. They really care about teaching and learning. Many of the faculty who identify as high-level researchers also really care about their teaching. There's long-standing tradition of faculty development resources through the Center for Teaching Excellence is what ours is called, but also again through the writing program. The faculty seminar on the teaching of writing began long before Heidi and I got there. If I'm thinking specifically about nursing, many of the nursing faculty care about student writing, because that's what we're going to talk about, and they're already very engaged with student writing. They were doing a lot of writing in their courses already. And it was thinking about ways to sort of systematize that. Okay, so some of the stressors, the WAC was started. This was a 5-year project with no guarantee that it would actually succeed after that or be funded after that. The long-term commitment was unclear. I still find, after 5 years, I still find the university very traditional and hierarchical, opaque as far as how decisions get made. There's a tremendous amount of pressure put on research faculty to produce and to get grants. There's also a tremendous amount of faculty put on the teaching track faculty to be exceptional teachers. What that sometimes means is, I don't know, they may say, if I feel comfortable experimenting in this class when I feel like it works, right? So even there are faculty that care about teaching, but they've got to think about their investment in changing it. We had a whopping 2 required writing courses, still do. A first-year writing, it is a universal requirement. Nobody at UVA can test out of it. So everybody has to take some version of a first-year writing course. And then we have a second writing requirement. I'll talk about it a little bit later. That criteria was almost minimal. And in fact, nobody could tell me where it came from. It predated nearly every single person I talked to about where it came from. Other stressors, a global pandemic, and in 5 years, crazy change. In the 5-year program of WAC, my 6 years, 2 presidents, 3 provosts, 2 vice presidents for academic affairs, who this falls under, and a dean in nearly every single undergraduate school. And this was sort of what we had to deal with. So in thinking about models for how to do this, right? So my background is in rhetoric of science, medicine, tech comm, right? So I leaned on work by this one sociologist who I think his work is amazing. This is some of his work with philosopher Robert Evans. And it gets us to think about the idea of expertise. We think of expertise sometimes, whether we like it or not, as a light switch that goes on and off. But it isn't, right? A lot of times expertise is helping someone understand how their tacit knowledge can be made more explicit, helping them unpack that this knowledge that they have is actually valuable. So in many ways, we used this as part of the model. Now, Elizabeth Wardle and some of her colleagues are talking about this. They've arrived at this exact same place, and I think in a much more exciting way, arguably, than we did. But this started informing what we did, and it meant that sometimes UVA faculty were where they were. Grad students are where they are. So if we want to get them someplace else, we got to think about how can we do that in a way that's manageable for them, that gives them lasting experiences, right? All the education people talk about stickiness. How do we give them opportunities in our faculty development that feel meaningful, that feel like they last, that aren't just quick fixes, but isn't necessarily asking them to join a new field? Because for our faculty, at least, that's a non-starter. And so this is one of the ways we did it. We also did it by looking at a lot of the research, right? And so one of the things that was a benefit of UVA is faculty actually really cared across the board. I like to jokingly say because of the weird tradition of UVA, all that Mr. Jefferson's university and all that stuff, right? No one wants to admit and they don't know what's going on in the room. So you'll be in a room and somebody will say something. At my previous institution, Case Western Reserve, loved it, right? People were quick to tell you that your field was intellectually bankrupt. But that would not happen at UVA, right? Because no one wanted to show that they didn't know about this field that these people are talking about. What it meant, though, was people were really receptive to research. They were really receptive as us saying, hey, all this research in writing studies, in composition, in psychology, there's a wealth, David Russell was talking about it this morning, there's a wealth of research in educational psychology that we were able to use. And Heidi and I came up with what we call like our core insight, is that this is how people actually learn to improve as writers. Repeated practice over time, multiple occasions to write and revise with meaningful feedback and instruction that is informed by the knowledge, skills, and habits of mind that they're supposed to develop. We allowed this to think about how might this inform the pedagogical practices that we're asking people to do. One of the things that before Heidi and I got there, they had a draft of this new criteria for our second writing requirement courses. And one of them before we got there was writing should be practiced and students should have opportunities to get writing instruction in the class. And I was like, wow, bio teachers giving writing instruction. This is great. Like this was a gold mine. This was come up by an interdisciplinary team, but it meant that we had to help them figure out what that writing instruction looked like. And this is one of the ways we did it. So before we got there, this is the previous second writing requirement criteria. It is minimal. It tells you nothing about, I mean, you can have a really bad, barely a writing class, right? And still be like, I have checked that box. So what we came up with, this is also very similar to Minnesota's Writing Enriched curriculum, which is really great. PhD there. And again, for us, this is very basic potentially. It should be a learning objective of the course. Writing should be sequenced and distributed across the course of the semester. If you want them to do 20 pages, great, but they don't have to be that long, right? But there needs to be some kind of drafting, feedback, and revision cycle, and we help faculty figure out what that means. But also, again, the golden one, it provides writing instruction and repeated opportunities to discuss and practice writing across the disciplines, whatever the course is. And so to come up with that, that's where we did a lot of our focus in faculty development and instructor development. We had some results from a study that had nothing to do with us. I wish we could claim it. 2 German professors, one took the faculty seminar, one did not, taught the exact same class. The one that took the seminar used the new criteria. The one that didn't was like, I want the old criteria. They together assessed student papers and they found that the quality of student writing according to their own measures increased significantly. Again, as a preview of what we think about with the School of Nursing. So our focus here, because the School of Nursing was already doing so much, it was to think largely about how can we foster a kind of meta-genre approach of building block tasks and large scale rhetorical moves, get them thinking about what are they already doing in their class? How can we help that be a little more systematic? Emphasize commonalities across the courses in the nursing curricula. The old Perkins and Solomon article, right? Our transfer people, they use this metaphor of mental grippers, and it's a way of thinking about something intentionally to help people understand recycled discourse, the same language across courses. Thinking about writing instruction as guidance and mentorship is an easy way in for faculty across the disciplines. And faculty in the School of Nursing, they did not read this excellent book like the Meaningful Writing Project, but they were already incorporating many of those things into their assignment. And if you haven't read that, this is great. This is also a really meaningful text for faculty in the disciplines. So I'm going to stop and then give it over to Ashley.
All right, hello. So just let Sarah know if you're on Zoom and you can't hear me, because I did put the microphone down in front of me because I need both hands to speak. So as Kenny and Heidi mentioned, I'm faculty at the School of Nursing. I'm a bit of an odd duck because I don't have a nursing background at all. I'm a lawyer. And it's too long of a story to explain to you how I'm teaching at a nursing school, including writing. But what I can say is I was at the nursing school for 1 year when my dean said, hey, there's this university committee I want you to serve on. Will you do it? And we all know that the answer to that is yes. And this was the QEP. And so I was new to the academic world. I was new to the School of Nursing. And I sat in this big high level university committee, listening to them talk about writing across the curriculum. And the question that was posed is, what should every UVA undergraduate know how to do in terms of writing by the time they graduate? So if they get a diploma from UVA as an undergraduate, what should they know how to do? And so I just sat there quietly listening to all of these people who were much more had more expertise in this than I did. And someone stood up and said, every UVA undergraduate should know how to write the perfect paragraph. And I had this pit of my stomach feeling because I had been at the School of Nursing long enough to know that, first of all, I could never sell that in a million years to my nursing faculty colleagues. And second of all, I kept thinking to myself, my nursing students at the end of their 4 years are going to be taking care of you. Like the fact that whether or not they can write the perfect paragraph is probably not our most important skill set that we need for them. Writing, yes. Perfect paragraph, no. And so one of the things I realized that my role in this large university committee was going to be was to help them understand how the BSN or the undergraduate nursing student is different from other undergraduate students. Not lesser, not necessarily better, although I'm very pro BSN, but different. And so as we were coming up with these university standards, we always had to take into account what they needed to know as nursing students. One of the positives of being sort of the representative for the nursing school in this committee is, and how we were going to try to take these concepts of what should an undergraduate learn how to do in terms of writing, is that we are lucky enough, we are a direct admit 4-year BSN traditional program. So we come right out of high school. So we have a closed 4-year curriculum. We get to control our 90 students. And they have a set plan, which I'll show later. So that was a very positive aspect of trying to take what was being discussed at a university level and figure out how are we going to translate this into a school level. The other positive was we had a very committed School of Nursing faculty as well as a dean. And so I knew I didn't have to sell my faculty or my dean that writing matters and that our nursing students need to know how to do this skill. Writing as a critical thinking skill is something that was a given that I walked into, which was great. I also had Heidi and Kenny as my WAC directors, which was wonderful. And I'll talk about how I leaned on them throughout this process. And then the second writing requirement that Kenny mentioned a minute ago that original second writing requirement with the very minimalistic requirements, but did require no more than 30 students, was actually something that the School of Nursing had embraced, although it was difficult because we have 90 students in a class. And so they had to break that class up into 3 sections in order to meet the second writing requirement. But the school was so committed to a second writing requirement, they were willing to change how they taught their students just to have it in there. So that was really a positive. The competition, for many, I do know, I think I've seen folks in here who have either are nurses or teaching at nursing schools. So you already know this, is that the BSN curriculum is very science heavy and very clinical rotation heavy. So we were going to have to say to our faculty teaching a lot of science classes, how are we going to not just have a second writing requirement where they do some writing and then never do writing again. Also with our clinical heavy classes, particularly near the end of the program in the 3rd and 4th year. The other competition that we had to face is that our BSN graduates must pass the NCLEX, the national exam, in order to be RNs. And so if you are asking, how do you measure a BSN program and its success? One thing is going to be NCLEX pass rates. And so that is something that you have to take into account. And then this was true before COVID, but it became even more apparent to all of us during the global pandemic, is that our graduates are going to be on the front line, taking care of people when they graduate. But this isn't something that they're going to do 4 or 5 years later after a graduate program. So they need to be prepared at graduation. So when we're weighing priorities and we're weighing what gets taught, these are the things that are competing against or can be perceived as competing against writing. So starting at the beginning, let's see if I can get this to pop up. We were successful earlier. Apparently not. Maybe it's thinking about it. So while it's possibly pulling this up, so what I needed to figure out is, before I launched into any type of conversation with the WAC directors of what are we doing is, or what do we do next, is what are we already doing? And so oh, I'm sorry. I made something bad happen. What is possibly on the screen somewhere is our curriculum. So what I did is looked at our 4-year. This is on the UVA School of Nursing website. If anybody's not interested in reading it, it's 2 pages, and really it is just our closed curriculum. And this is what every BSN student will take over their 4 years, and in what order. So I reached out to every single faculty member who taught any one of these classes for over the 4 years and sent them an email after getting permission from my program director to harass them, and just said, can you tell me what type of writing is happening in your courses? And I gave them examples and anything from patient experience reflections to case notes, research papers, op-eds, you name it. I just said, whatever, any type of writing that's happening in your class that gets submitted in any way to be evaluated. And so I took that information. I'll just show you the second page just for fun. That's the rest of the curriculum. And can I just click on it to get out? Yes, can I go back to the PowerPoint without terminating anything? So I was very fortunate to have very cooperative colleagues who mostly responded to my first email, and it took a couple emails to get it all. But what I did was take all of the responses and then map it out year by year by year, class by class by class, so that we could see where the writing was happening and what kind of writing was happening. It'll pop up. what this showed, as Kenny alluded to in his section, is that the BSN program at the time was already doing a lot of writing with undergraduate students, not just because we had a second writing requirement course, but because faculty had already faculty had already put into their own classes and prioritized writing as something that nursing students needed to be doing. And that was a gift, right? So when you're thinking about how do I embed writing into a four-year curriculum and you find out, oh, it's already embedded. Isn't that wonderful? I'm done. Not exactly, but that was a really big positive first step, is mapping it out, understanding where the writing was happening, what types of writing were happening, put us very far ahead of the game of at least where I thought we were going to be. But the map also showed there was absolutely no coordination between the courses when it came to writing. That the faculty had no idea what other types of writing was going on in any of the other courses. And this was highlighted by something that we saw with what I call same title but different assignments, reflective writing assignments. And so almost every course other than the core science classes had some type of reflective writing assignment. However, one of the things I did once I learned about all the writing was then to follow up with, can you give me an assignment sheet so that I can see what it is that they're actually doing? And then looking at all of those assignment sheets, I realized, goodness gracious, there's one class that says a reflective writing assignment is a 2-page single-spaced assignment with at least 4 sources, APA style. Whereas another course was saying, you know, this is a reflective writing assignment that's purely based on a patient experience, and you're going to be writing about your feelings of having worked with that patient and what that patient experience brought up for you. Same title, but clearly very different requirements and very different goals and purposes for the students, which of course then led to students were very frustrated with us as faculty as a whole when it came to writing, and they said things like, you make us write too much. And so we realized, well, we didn't think we were making you write too much, but we were doing a very bad job of helping you understand why you were doing the writing. And by confusing you, our students, with what types of writing assignments we were offering them and having them do, we were sort of undercutting our already good work. So this helped us obviously see that one of the things we needed to focus on was not embedding more writing into the curriculum, which was truly something I thought was going to be the answer when I first started looking at things. And then realized, oh no, we don't necessarily need more writing. What we need to do is be more transparent about the writing that they're already doing. We need to connect across the classes, not just within the scaffolding within a class of assignments, but how do you help them understand over a 4-year program what they're writing about and why they're writing? And then of course, how do you transfer skills that they're learning in year 1 or year 2 so that they pass along to year 3 and 4? Again, this is where the nursing curriculum is a wonderful gift, because nursing and nursing students are taught this all the time. You're skill building. And so they know what it means to go from one course to the next, pathophysiology followed by advanced pathophysiology, right? Pharmacology followed by advanced pharmacology. They know how to build. So what we needed to do is take what was already embedded in the curriculum and help do it for writing. Okay, so with the help of Kenny and Heidi, right, who I was like, okay, I showed them all my stuff and said, well, what do we do? Because this is not my area. I'm a lawyer and I teach ethics. And I'm just on this committee. So what do we do with all of this? And they were the ones who helped me really understand that the transparency piece of what was lacking. One of the things that was really lacking, as Kenny referred to earlier, the mental grippers. We weren't offering our students anything to help them take the things they were learning in one class about writing into subsequent classes. So Kenny and I, this was our sort of first attempt at trying to outline what was actually happening on a larger level with the assignments that they were doing. So we came up with research, report, respond as different types of writing, different ideas behind or purposes of the writing. And we took it to our nursing faculty and said, hey, does this describe, can you fit all of your assignments under one of these categories? Does this accurately describe what you're doing? And the feedback was great. They said, kinda. Fortunately for us, you know, our faculty helped us refine this into something much clearer and easier to understand. And Heidi is the one who helped us. We call these the stickers. So this is Heidi helped create the design as well as the name. And our writing faculty helped us isolate our types of writing into two main categories: writing to learn, writing to communicate, using the language of WAC. But they also offered us these subcategories. So writing to learn, explore, consider, reflect. These are actually words coming out of the new AACN BSN Essentials. And so in 2021, the AACN said, hey, guess what? We don't care that there's a pandemic going on. We need you to revamp your BSN curriculums, start doing it. Here are the new ways to be thinking about it. And so because our faculty are amazing, they said, sure, we'll put that on top of everything else we're trying to do. And but these are the words that they pulled out of the essentials, right? So these are not words that Kenny and Heidi and I came up with. These are words that the nursing faculty came up with. Once we sort of engaged them about what is the concept of writing to learn as a type, and what is the concept of writing to communicate. So this is a slightly messy slide, but what we ended up doing is saying writing to learn assignments and asking our faculty, you know, what should belong underneath a writing to learn assignment. Things like summaries of articles, writing responses to prompts, writing reflections to patient experiencing, analyzing a case, implementing a plan. And we started talking about these as sort of building block assignments for the students. We also had the writing to communicate assignments. These are the much sort of heftier assignments that are more identified, like a research project, lit reviews, ethical case studies, which is what I do, and sort of the typical research paper, research and report on different types, nursing concepts, health campaigns, group presentations. And so what we did with the faculty, go back 2 slides, is started to use the stickers. So, and one way of helping them transfer, right? So we knew that the students were already doing the work. They were already doing all the writing assignments. We just weren't helping them transfer from one class to the next, why they were doing something in one class that they would then do again in another class, but we just wouldn't tell them they were doing the same skill or were doing a similar skill. So one way we thought of doing that, helping them understand the transference as well as faculty understand the transference, is to start labeling assignments with writing to learn sticker or writing to communicate sticker, so that they would start to see the emblem over and over again. And then our syllabi, as well as our we have, I guess, Canvas now, embedded into our sites, have descriptions. What is writing to learn? What is writing to communicate? And it's the same description. so that this faculty can start saying, oh, remember, this is a writing to learn assignment. You had one of these in first year. This is what this is. This is why we do it. So the faculty aren't having to reinvent the wheel each time with what does this mean? They can take the standard language that we've developed and start using it with their class. It's pretty low entry. So one of the things we had to be thoughtful about when we were creating all of this is not asking our faculty to do a whole lot more than what they were already doing. So I'll go back to here. All right. So with the help of Heidi and Kenny, we got this all tiered up as sort of our first kind of interim launch, right? What were we going to do? We're going to start with these stickers. We're going to start with some syllabus language. We're going to start with some explanation that faculty can use to start highlighting what they're already doing so that year one will now map onto year 2, year 3, and year 4. And we haven't had to do a tremendous amount of change, in part because we already had a tremendous amount of writing. We just needed to be better about connecting the dots. So it was time to implement, and then we had to take a big break. And that was because we had a global pandemic and we're a nursing school. And what we needed to do is focus our students on being prepared. We graduated our class in 2020, 6 weeks early. So we took our graduating class of 2020 and we worked with the Board of Nursing in Virginia to get them graduated 6 weeks earlier so they could take the NCLEX 6 weeks earlier so that they could hit the ground 6 weeks earlier. So as you can imagine, anything that didn't have to do with the global pandemic, the School of Nursing took a back seat. We also had 2 new BSN program directors. Each one of them I had to sell on this whole idea, which is not something I had to do previously. And as I mentioned earlier, the AACN decided to ask us to revamp the core curriculum for BSN in the middle of all of this. But we did it. So we had a launch last year. We had a soft launch and then we had the hard launch. And that allowed us to at least start introducing both to students and to faculty the concepts of connecting the dots between the classes and the class assignments without having to ask them to redo their assignments or redo their classes, which is something I was strictly told I was not allowed to do to the faculty. So Heidi's going to bring us into sort of where we are with this piece of it from a programmatic level.
It's not showing up online. I just want to share screen share.
I will not be nearly as interesting as Ashley. I'm sorry to tell you. But I will talk to you about kind of what we learned from working with them and watching her manage this beautiful thing. And then what that looked like pragmatically on our side in WAC. So yeah, our perspective. So just stepping back for a second, UVA, these are kind of all of the schools that we have. So obviously the College of Arts and Sciences is the biggest, but we also have these other schools that are very independent. So we are not a, what do we like to say? We like to say that we're decentralized. So they don't always work and play well with each other. They want lots of independence and they do things differently in their own ways. So by necessity, Kenny really was smart enough to build a very flexible WAC program on the front end. We did a ton of piloting of different kinds of services in the different schools to see kind of what worked for people. We did lots of assessments, we took lots of notes. And so let's see, these are the schools we ended up working with the most so far. The ones in italics are graduate schools, and for the QAP, we weren't allowed to work with grad students for the most part, so we didn't work with them at all. We've worked some with McIntyre Commerce and C's. They're a little more recalcitrant, as you're not surprised probably. And then we worked heavily with these other schools, all in very different ways. But School of Nursing is definitely kind of the flagship program that we had a really rich, robust relationship with. And just to explain that a little bit more too. These are the primary things that we do with WAC in terms of things that we work with the schools on. So we do a lot of individual consultations with faculty, targeted workshops where the schools, we have kind of a suite that we've developed that we go out and do, but they can also call us and request a specific workshop if they want to. We do training sessions with any particular group of faculty. So if there's a group that's teaching a certain kind of class, we might go in. We do graduate student training, like with that and the public policy group will go in and talk to about 50 of their TAs every semester and do a targeted training for them. We pilot the writing enhanced criteria across everywhere if we can, doing lots of student writing assessment, the 2 seminars that Kenny already talked about. We're building programming partnerships beyond WAC now, doing joint research, and then curriculum scaffolding across the curriculum. And of all of those things, these are all the things that nursing does. So most of the schools kind of opt into 1 or 2 of them, but nursing has been a wonderful partner to be able to see how all of these things integrate when we can work with people on all of them at the same time. So in terms of our annual planning, what that means for us in WAC, like as I step in and say, okay, so what do I need to do to make sure that we keep this going? We set up regular meetings, probably 2 to 4 a semester with Ashley and whoever else is appropriate at that time. We have had a lot of shifting leadership, so the 2-line changes, but Ashley is our anchor to discuss curriculum planning, all the things that need to happen that semester. We try to get a short spot at their faculty opening session, which sometimes has been us, but it's more often Ashley gets to stand up and say something on our behalf. And then we have been doing targeted workshops. We've done that in different ways, but last year was the most successful, I think, where we were able to kind of get in their cycle of these like lunch and learns that they already do, or continuing education program, where we can be one of the speakers on their schedule. We have piloted the courses, obviously, and then we've done training sessions with the faculty specifically who are going to teach those classes. And then we've done lots of assessment. We had the advantage of having lots of assessment because of the QEP. And so there were lots of different types of assessment that were mandatory. And that also let us see what was working and what wasn't. And so as we go forward, we can build in more like targeted assessment over the next few years too. So our takeaways in progress. We, I think, learned a lot about supporting and learning from disciplinary faculty. Nursing is also, I mean, we know that all of the disciplines have their own cultures and quirks and things, and we have to kind of go in, and I always think of it as a cross-cultural moment where you're going in and like kind of eavesdropping and seeing how do people do this here and then adapting to them. But nursing is great because they are so centered in their own identity. And sometimes I go into those meetings and people don't even know what their culture is. They might have a rigid curriculum or you know, schedules or things, but they don't even really understand what it is that they're doing, and they know what they're doing. So it's been helpful for me to learn from Ashley how it works in nursing, and then that's helped me in all the other schools as well, because I can say, oh, they're doing it too, they just don't know it. So how can I kind of like learn from nursing self-awareness to learn from there? And then yeah, learning and adapting to those existing cultures and infrastructures. So things like realizing, oh, we want to do a workshop with them, we need to get in their rotation. What is their rotation that's already existing? How do I find that out? We've learned a lot about the assessment challenges, and that's supposed to say 4-year curriculum. I haven't slept much in a long time, and a baby, but across the 4-year curriculum, because in the last 2 years, the BSN students are moving into their clinicals, they're moving into preparing for that big national exam, the licensing exam, and so the writing heavy stuff is real, like the most writing heavy stuff is happening in the first 2 years. So there are assignments we can assess in the first 2 years, but they don't match at all what they're doing in the 4th year. So it's not like there's a neat one-to-one correlation where we can say, oh, let's see how they were writing in their 1st year and how they're writing in their 4th year. The assignments don't align, and also like their priorities don't align, right? If they're trying to save people's lives from COVID, they do not care about sitting down and writing me a thoughtful, well-crafted, perfect paragraph or whatever it is that we don't ask them to do the perfect paragraph. But it's been really hard to figure out what that is. So that's one of our goals for the next year, is to try to figure out how can we scaffold 2 assignments that would give us that assessment option. Learning to norm in accordance with faculty expectations, which again, we learned in working across all of the disciplines, but it has been educational to see like what the norming or what the outcome expectations are of the nursing faculty when we sit in those norming sessions with them. And then the School of Nursing, just because again, it has been so well integrated and so thoughtful, it has given us a chance to say, oh, okay, so for instance, think it was Batten had approached us at one point and said they were interested in doing more of this scaffolding across their whole curriculum. This is the public policy school. They have no idea what that looks like. And I wouldn't have had any idea what that looked like, but I can study and see what Ashley did. And then I can kind of reverse engineer a little bit. So there are other things that they do well that I can then import to the other schools. However, we do have to be careful with how we talk about them because the other schools get really intimidated and think that it's going to be a huge lift for them. And so to be able to say, oh, no, you could also just send a faculty member to the faculty seminar. That's fine. And lowering the bar to entry as much as possible. All right, so briefly looking ahead. So these are our upcoming goals for probably the next 1 to 2 years. And again, yeah, we want to try a new assessment approach between the second and the fourth years, not the first and the second, to allow for better comparisons. We want to establish more of a regular rotation for those workshops and pilots and training sessions, which I think now that we've done it enough, we can start to predict a little bit better. We want to have more consistent assessment of that faculty development programming. So when we go in, we do these things. We don't always have a pre-post like assessment metric for them when they come to the sessions. We need to start tracking that better. We would really like to get the students' perspectives more in lots of ways. There's a whole research project, I think, attached to that. And then the School of Nursing is the group that we've done the most research with, and we would love to keep doing that. So I think that is everything for now. And that's our contact information, but we do have time for taking any questions that you have, or if you just have reflections on how this connects to your own work, we'd love to hear that too. Thank you very much for coming today. I think so, yeah.
Okay,
I'll be the courier.
Thanks. So that was very informative. I am also doing a WID QEP. I just finished my first year of implementation, so it was really interesting to hear how it went for you. And I guess my question is just, you're at the end, you finished your QEP, right? So could you tell me a little bit more about the assessment plan that you had laying out in the QEP? And then also, how did the 5-year report go?
So the assessment plan is laid out in the original QEP did not happen because it was created before I was hired and Heidi was hired, and the director of the writing program is fantastic, but he was doing like 7 jobs. It was just a totally different system. It was like a lot of embedded fellows and classes, and which is great, but my philosophy is like teach your own class, like don't hire somebody. You need to come up with goals and objectives that you as a biologist or a physicist can teach. If not, there's a problem. So we had to, in many ways, scrap that, but we did it through trying things and finding out that it didn't work, right? Institutional assessment, because the QEP was also tied into our other assessments had to be done. The state of Virginia has its own accrediting thing that's like every 5 years you will assess these. So our assessment at the end was a little apple and orangey in some way, right? Because there were certain things that we had to do for Chev, our state thing, that were a little bit not perfectly aligned with what we would like to have done, right? So some of our assessment didn't actually directly track in the way that we would have loved what was going on with people who implemented our WE criteria, our new writing enhanced criteria, right? So if we had to do it over again, it would have been like, we had faculty who took the faculty seminar. They were most likely to do follow-ups with us. They were most likely to implement this new criteria because they were tailored with each other. They were also most likely in different posts to say, I like this, I'm going to keep using it. In fact, I'm using this section in my other class that's not a writing enhanced class, right? There's find the ways they sneak it in. I would love for that to have been most of our assessment, to track that and then look at student writing for students who took a certain number of those courses. But the train had started and we had to keep writing it.
And I was just going to say, so what ended up actually happening, because yes, but there were 2 things I was going to tell you. One, we did have to be really flexible and shift on the types of assessment we were doing. The 2 that ended up being most helpful in the final report were we did a lot of faculty pre and post assessments. So it was about confidence levels for the most part. And then So our last assessment that we didn't love, but it was interesting.
We got good
It was
stuff.
huge. Yeah, and we should tell them that. So they call it the 3-in-1 assessment. So it was 3 different assessments all for one, and they overlapped. So they were looking at information literacy, critical thinking, and written communication. So the written communication one was the most helpful for us. But because it was all of those at once, they did we assessed 20 different classes at least.
Yeah.
I'm missing it, but across every school and then a bunch in the college. And then our office was able to backtrack and say, like, they came up with some outcomes. So they curated the report, right? To say, like, this is what's not helpful for us to know about, and then this is what's helpful for us to know about. But the things that were helpful were things like the 2 big outcomes that we're going to be using and that went into the report were that our students as a whole were really good at critical thinking. They were very good at reading and assessing and synthesizing and figuring things out. They were not good at putting their own thoughts down or like pushing forward. They are not comfortable with that. They want to play it safe. And so they weren't creative, and that's not great, right? And then the other thing was that they were really good at starting things, and almost all of them, like the introductions and the overall kind of structures of their paper were really good, and they all fell off at the end. And so those are things that we can take forward. And so for the QEP, the report, it wasn't so much that it had to look like, oh, look, you had this great transformation. It was more like you've assessed what's working and you have a plan for the next 5 years of how you're going to do it. And that went well. Yeah. Yeah. The long walk.
Thank you. So first, just a quick comment. I love the stickers, and I don't know if when you said connect the dots, if that was deliberately a pun or not, but I might steal that. I think it's cool. But my question actually, so I've done a lot of work with our nursing faculty, and for like 3 or 4 years, there was just this huge emphasis on the APA paper, almost to the point that it was like fetishized. And of course the students are like, I'm never going to write an APA style paper. Like, they got the need to be able to read them and process them. And so only recently, through some of this expertise based framing, was I able to get them to realize, oh, maybe we could have them doing genres like patient documentation, or like writing for purposes like patient advocacy, things like that. But they're worried that the rest of the college will be kind of resistant to that shift away from research. And so I'm wondering if you've seen a similar tension in your college, and if so, how you've kind of navigated that.
Yeah, so that's a great observation that I absolutely did. So we did the perfect paragraph question that came out of a QEP. I then took to my faculty and said, I'm a lawyer, so please don't expect me to tell you what nursing students should know how to do. Please tell me, what should a nursing student 4th year know how to do in terms of written communication? And the number one thing that often came up was the APA research paper, 8 to 10 page research paper. And I thought at first, well, okay, that's what my faculty are telling me is a must. I'm not gonna investigate that. I'm just gonna take that as a given and figure out, what are we doing? However, fortunately, because I had Kenny and Heidi, as well as I did the map, and I would say the mapping of the entire curriculum was one of the most successful things I did for helping my faculty understand what was happening. Because by seeing in every single class, which even if they're not teaching that class, they know what that class is and they know how it fits into the curriculum. And so they could see, well, this is going on in therapeutics, this is in health assessment, we have something called CARE, we have lots of acronyms, we have REAL, and they were able to say, oh, well, that's a lot of writing, and that's good writing. And then when we started to circle back to, and I said, well, where do you want the research paper to be? Still being like a good, trying to do what they asked me to do. That's when they started to let go of it, because in their heads, because when they were coming through school, they had to write the APA research paper. But once they saw that their student, and I think there's the fear that their students aren't going to be writing if you take the research paper away from them. And in reality, when they saw that in everything except for the core science classes, the students were doing a fair amount of writing of different genres and for different purposes, they were a little more relaxed and thinking, oh, well, our students are writing and they're doing quality writing. They're just not necessarily doing 8 to 10 page research papers, APA style. And that is when Kenny and Heidi were able to come in and say, let's talk about writing as a learning process and skill transfer. And we were pretty quickly able to pivot from the, hey, I want a research paper to, hey, I want skill transfer. Because again, nursing faculty know all about skill transfer. It's core to the whole 4-year program. You have to build every semester, every class on the skills that you're learning. And as soon as we could say writing is the same, how do we make sure that they're transferring that skill you taught them in the 1st-year class or in care to real, to health policy, to these things? How do we focus on that? Then the obsession with the research paper went away and it never came back. To this day, it is not a part of our conversations. Where's the research paper for APA? That's what happened.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I found that so informative. I was just wondering, I know you had it on your upcoming goals to get student perspectives, but I was just curious if you have like sensed any early data on how students are feeling about writing, like if that sense of frustration has started to go away, or just what their thoughts are with this work that's been happening.
So I can say I do teach one of the courses. I teach REAL, stands for Research, Ethics, Advocacy, Leadership, but did not make that name up. I was handed it. I turned it into what is real about nursing and what is not real. And so I get the students, as Heidi was talking about, we do have a writing heavy 2nd year. So they take a course care followed by REAL, so fall, spring. Care is now the 2nd writing requirement, or the writing enhanced for our program. And so what we've done is sort of consolidated a lot of writing into that 1-year period. And Heidi, Kenny can also talk about, because he goes into the care class to sort of say, why are we doing all of this? What is this all about? And does a presentation to the students. So I get them the semester after they've gone through, why are you doing this? What is this all about? And I can say the difference between not the sort of before and after for me as a faculty member and just my students' ability to connect the dots, which was on purpose, is stark. Like, I don't have to do as much explaining now because someone is doing that explaining for them in the prior class, and I get to piggyback on that and say, hey, remember? And use the stickers. And I found it a really simplistic concept when they broached it to me, put stickers on your assignment sheets. And I was like, really? You want me to sell that to my faculty? Okay. It's an easy lift when we can all do it, but I didn't think it would make that much of a difference. And I can say the students recognize it, and it does help them pull off back to that piece of information they learned the semester before. Why are we doing this? What is writing to learn? What's a reflective writing assignment all about? Why are we doing this? So I think I have gotten less pushback as one of the mean people who make them write a lot in my class than I did before we implemented this stuff. That's been sort of my faculty experience.
In defense of the APA 10 paper, we're nurses. It's not about the paper. It's more about evidence-based practice, and that is the foundation of our practice and how we move nursing forward. So if you can explain that research doesn't have to always translate to a research paper, We do evidence-based practice every semester in our nursing program, and not once does it translate to an 8 to 10 page paper. It is always evidence-based. We teach evidence-based practice. We explain to the students why we do it. And it starts in nursing assistant and moves, like I teach a paramedicine to RN transition, which is a unique program in the United States, and even into our core nursing program. So APA is like foundational, evidence-based practice is foundational. But what happens is, as teachers, people who don't have teaching background but have nursing background, we do how we were taught. And back in Florence Nightingale days, she literally wrote papers on how to open the window, how to take people outside. And that was the basis of evidence-based practice. And that's how it translated. And so that's why it translates like that to all of us, because from the beginning, that's how it translated, by literally Florence Nightingale days. And so if you can explain that writing doesn't have to be a paper, that learning those things doesn't have to translate to that, it's so much easier. I enjoy evidence-based practice because then my students create this beautiful space of, I didn't even realize that this is like a real thing and this is how we move forward. And it never is a paper in my classroom ever, but they still write and they still get across to me what they've learned. So that is, no, it's totally not. I'm not offended. I'm just like, that is where it comes from. That is our why. And if you don't live in the nursing space, you don't understand why we hold on to things like that. It is literally because we not until recently have been seen as a professional practice. We were always the doctor's helper. And the way that we push forward in our practice is evidence-based practice and saying these are the things, and we do it every single day. And that's why we hold on to it, because that's what created our space of professionalism.
Yeah, yeah. The APA style, I think that intellectual part of the evidence-based practice actually got background. That's good.
Yeah, well, APA is like a Bible for us. So.
Do they need to know that the top of the page should say running? But helping them think. And one of the things that was in an early version, I don't think it stuck necessarily, right? Was getting them to think about, okay, in a clinical setting, you observe, you assess, and you intervene. And those are moves that you make in a clinical setting. And thinking about how those relate to things like researching and then reporting back and then having some, so getting to think about that was also really helpful in letting loose and even talking about our disciplinary fetishes, right? If somebody used a term and they're not using the real rhetorical term, I'm just like, there's a name for that. There's a name for that, right?
Yeah, so I just want to piggyback and I'll hand this off. And we obviously do evidence-based practice at the University of Virginia School of Nursing. I want to make sure I plug that. But I think the issue had been the idea that the capstone of the nursing program, right, that 4th year was going to be an APA beautiful evidence-based practice research paper, 8 to 10 pages, 12 to 15. And somehow that got lodged. And when the question was asked, what do you think a 4th year BSN student should know how to do when it comes to writing? That was what was offered first. And it took all of these different steps for them to get back to what you've just articulated so well, which is what the nurses need to know. It's evidence-based practice and it's how you communicate it. Does that need to be an APA style 8 to 9 page paper? For some distinguished majors, yeah, our distinguished majors do that. But for others, it could be a joint poster presentation, it could be a care plan, right? There's different ways of doing that. So it was really just a shift from, let me just manufacture in my head what's the perfect thing that the students should do, to what do I really think in my own day-to-day practice that should look like. And once that shift was made, we've never revisited it.
And kind of to what you were asking. So at our college, which is a community college, we started kind of, you know, from the top down. So we said, what do we want our nurses to know, and what makes a good nurse? And we said clinical judgment. And clinical judgment is the ability to take all of the information and then make sense of it. And what action do you need to take? And so then the first time we started, like our first attempt was, okay, well, how are we going to get them there? And then our second attempt, we realized that starting foundationally, you can't do anything with the information if you don't understand the information to begin with. And that goes to some of the next gen style questionings, which is like recognizing cues. So we have them start with a basic report sheet in nursing assistant and have all the details that they're going to need. So if they are not getting an effective report, it cues them to ask more questions. And then as they develop, that gradually has those little extra tips and pointers are gradually taken away until they get a report sheet, which is what a nurse looks like, what a regular nurse uses as a report sheet now. But we had to like take a step back. Like, how do they ever get there? We have to teach them how to get there. And so it's like a scaffolding type of assignment, but it's really, it's writing to communicate. And so I think that also helping them understand that there's so much that we do that's writing that doesn't look like what we consider writing. Because I would have said easily that the only writing we did was APA papers. But I would agree that's not what makes the best nurse.
This is really interesting, and thank you for all your perspective and work. I just want to like piggyback with a technical question about this conversation. So in a Doctor of Nursing program, which we have at my school, like, what would your opinion be in terms of like, if you were trying to get the BSN, which I'm not, but this is really interesting, to move away from APA. And I agree with all your reasoning. It's not that I don't want to do it. It's just I've got other things to do. But in the future, if I did, what would you say in terms of like MSN, DNP, in terms of like the higher level of publication? Like, would that be subtracting from their ability to publish in the future? What's your opinion on that?
So we had a lot of conversations about this because we do have MSN programs and PhD programs and DMP programs, and we have BSN to DMP to BSN to PhD, you know. And so what our faculty said is, we're still teaching them in the BSN program the core concepts for how you would put together in an if you're in the MSN and you're needing to write your research article, right? So we're going to teach them lit review, right? Back to the evidence-based practice. In these courses, through the 4 years, we're going to teach them these core skills of research, of writing to learn and writing to communicate. It just may not translate into a 4th year APA research paper as their capstone. We do now have a distinguished major program where students can, in their 4th year, sign up to do a research project that will result in an APA research paper. But everyone who graduates, and this was really important to our faculty when we sat down and said, what do you think that they need to know, not just to be a good nurse with critical clinical judgment, but also those who we hope will go into a master's program or farther, advanced practice nursing. And they said, well, they need to know how to do these core skills that are related to research and writing. And then in their master's program, we'll take them to the next level and get them ready for the publishable paper, right? Or the paper that should be submitted so that it can be critiqued. And that applies also to DNP and PhD. It wasn't that you don't need to know how to do this because you're just a BSN. It's like you need to know how the core concepts are and know how to do those skills. And then in your next iteration of master's or whatever, then we will be ready to take you, and you'll be ready, right? You'll have those skills, and then we'll take you to that research-based paper that could be submitted to a journal. So that was they were very thoughtful about that, because there is a sense that you move nursing forward by being able to publish and to being able to do nursing research so that the world sees what you're doing. And nobody wanted to back away from that. If anything, they wanted to enhance it.
Actually embedded in MSN and a PhD program. So like we teach evidence-based practice and research. And in my BSN, we did the same thing. And then in my MSN, it was re-taught in a higher skill level. So like my BSN program was just a lot of writing. We did our ADN where we actually teach. We were in nursing school together. And so and then my BSN program was just a boatload of papers. And that was all it was just writing and writing and writing and writing. I don't think I learned anything in my BSN program other than how to write an APA formatted paper. And then in my MSN program, it was like, okay, you learned this evidence-based, like you learned research, you learned all these things. Now we're going to push it forward into this new space. And this is how we move forward in this new space. And we're in a PhD program now, and it circles back around and says, you learned this part here, you learned this part here. Now we're learning this part here. And so it's just, it's scaffolded into the different levels of your education. And so it builds. I didn't need to write 52,000 APA formatted papers in my BSN to be able to be successful in my MSN. It wasn't necessary. I did it, but it wasn't necessary.
So I'm at a small liberal arts college, but we're a little odd because we also have graduate programs, including a DNP. And it's only about 5 to 8 years old. And many of the faculty who teach in it previously taught in the BSN program and just stepped up. And many of the first students who joined it did their bachelor's degree at our college. And so those faculty and those students took for granted that they had done the APA paper. And then when we started having other students join the DNP program who did not have their undergraduate degree from us, it started to show some of the fissures in that those students didn't have the sort of writing instruction that the students who'd been with us had had. And so it has been a matter of sort of using the faculty against themselves within the department in the friendliest way possible and completely transparently. Where they realized they were having a really hard time getting students to write this paper because they have to write it outside of any course, which is weird. They get 0 credits for it. They just have to do it. And no, they weren't allowed to talk to faculty about doing it. Like they weren't allowed to be advised by faculty because they wanted to peer review, like they wanted the faculty to grade it, not knowing who the student was. And we're so small, they would know who each student was. So it's been a process to make that not happen anymore. And so we've gotten there. So now they actually have to talk to their students about writing this instead of students coming to us and expecting me to know anything about nursing. Although I know a lot more now than I used to. And then for the DNP program, ChatGPT actually scared the daylights out of them. And they were seeing a lot of academic dishonesty within the DNP projects, especially because of COVID and those particular students being pushed to their limits in every possible way. They were just perfectly positioned to use whatever resources they had to get through this project. So we're actually doing something with them now in the DNP program, which is, I know when I get back to my office next week, they have given me every assignment sheet for writing from the DNP program, and it's just sitting on my desk waiting for me when I get back. So it's been really lovely to hear about your mapping because it's basically what I have to do when I get back. And then that faculty, once they have their sort of program scaffolded, they can push back against their colleagues they're just all in the same office suite, right? And say, well, this is what we do in DNP. And there have been some materials that we created for the BSN that we've been able to transfer into the DNP, things like teaching them to do research grids and all those sorts of things. So it's all a negotiation, right? But one of the challenges I found is the fact that we have clinical faculty who come in and teach one course. And we have this in our social work program too, and our MSW program and our speech language path program. How do we support those faculty in teaching writing when they are working full-time jobs? This is something they do out of the love of the field. They don't have the training. They don't have time for the training. So how do you support them?
So our clinical faculty have always been involved in this from the beginning. So they got the email from me as well, because we didn't want them to feel left out, because many of our clinical faculty have reflective writing, right? So that's, they do have things that have to be entered into something called Python, which I don't want to learn about. And, but they did a lot of reflective writing. So I said, you're part of this too. And they were welcome to the workshops. I'm not sure that many clinical faculty came to the workshops, but some did. And they were part of, we get together at the beginning of every fall and have a faculty meeting with clinical faculty. And that's where either Heidi or Kenny or me is there to say, this is what we're doing, try to explain it. With clinical faculty, the ask isn't to say, you need to be teaching them how to write, because we're still having that conversation amongst ourselves. What does it mean to teach our students how to write? Instead, it's help be part of this 4-year program with our stickers, which says, this is our job in some other classes to tell them what writing to learn is about, and to work with them through that and answer their questions. You're part of us, so can you put this on your assignment sheets? And could you put this in your syllabus? And if they have a question, you can direct them to me, or you can direct them to this person, so that they're also continuously in this process. But again, I was asked / told, don't harass my faculty. And of course, these are my colleagues, so I'm being a little, tongue in cheek. I didn't want to harass them either. I didn't want to put anything on their plate that I thought was not essential. But at the same time, clinical faculty belong in this conversation, even if they have a group of 8, and that is all they touch our students, because they're all part of this. And it's so important. Thanks to Kenny and Heidi for helping me understand this. The transference piece is repetitive. You just have to keep reminding them what this is over and over and over again, and what they're doing and why they're doing it. And so this was just the stickers have been an easy way to engage our clinical faculty without asking them to do a lot more, which I think I could not ask our clinical faculty to do more, because they are doing a tremendous amount. So that's how we include the clinical faculty. So the question is, do they adjust the language of their assignment, seeing the language of the stickers? And so, yeah, we've given them some templates that they helped write to put with the assignments. And so I haven't gone back to check every assignment sheet that's out there to see, are the stickers there? Is the language there? But the feedback I've gotten for those who attend the workshops, or some of the faculty meetings where we're talking about this, is positive. Like, they see this as a positive. Like, putting a sticker on your assignment sheet does not feel like a heavy lift. But once it's there, it helps them engage. What is it that I'm trying to get them to do with the reflective writing? This patient experience that they're going to write about. So far, and this is what Heidi and I have to do, which is do much more faculty assessment. Like, we've done it now for a year. What difference does it make? What are they? Do they like it? Do they hate it? Where is it there? As well as with the students. Oh.
Yeah. I will say really quickly, well, thank you all. I'd love to talk about doing stuff with part-time faculty. We have to do that a lot with our Center for Continuing and Professional Studies. And the person who's doing DSP, who's walking out the door now, the QEP, let's stay in touch, because there's some horror stories I would like to tell you about, though I probably shouldn't say that. I'm very serious, very serious. Thank you all so much for coming. Thank you so much.